see you all after this storm that has passed through Houston. You were affected, so was I. So I couldn't do enough justice to what I want to present today. So there's a whole lot of unedited material. There's a lot of slides over there. No chance to finish in the next 45 minutes, but I'll try to race through these. I'm sorry, I should have put this to silent. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Before I start. So the first topic we talked was the toxicity of enforced narratives in the Hindu identity. And we went through an exercise and we identified the frameworks that have given a corrupted version of who we are, attacking our identity. Is it not loud enough? Is it okay? Okay. Maybe you can make it a little louder. So we identified things like the colonials, the missionaries, the Eurocentric people, and as well as the socialists and the Marxists, who have had a hand in this horrendous corruption of who we are as a people, as a civilization, and other such things. Today, we additionally have wokeism, which is an offshoot of leftism and Marxism, and Islamism also, who have joined the battle to attack Hindus and Hinduism, our ideas, and who we are. So we identified some of those things in the first talk. In the second talk, we identified a core corruption. That is, are we Aryans, Dravidians, and tribals, or who are we as Indians? So we went through an exercise using science as a background. We identified many, many areas of disciplines, and we said, where is the evidence on the deep history of our antiquity? And we showed that Bharat is a very ancient civilization. It is not like they're saying we had Harappa, they disappeared. Then we had Aryans who came to India 1500 BC. We are all a bunch of castes and those kind of things. So nothing like that. It shows that it's a very ancient civilization. In the third talk, we said, if we are an ancient civilization, we should have evidence of deep knowledge systems. So I took the examples of mathematics, astronomy. I couldn't talk much on medicine, but I took these ancient disciplines and showed enormous amounts of knowledge over here. Citation, each researcher citing the ones prior to him and showing the growth of knowledge. Clear evidence of an accumulation of knowledge as befits an ancient civilization. So in today's talk, I'm going to talk to you about the impact of Indian knowledge systems. I have not had the time to get the downfall. So what we see is in Western narrations in the history of science, India is always an inconsequential footnote. If at all you take any Western book and see what does India contribute to science, they'll say, yeah, they got a symbol for zero. That's about it. So basically it's a big zero. There's nothing else. So, but then we find that this is done so that the West can exalt Greece as the source of all knowledge systems. This is what we find. As we dig deeper and deeper, we find they have no standing at all. In today's talk, I hope to convince you of the evidence out there that shows the impact of Indian knowledge systems on the old world civilizations. I'm going to race through this because there's so much of talks over here. And like I said, this is the motivation for that. This cartoonish image shows that after this Aryan invasion theory of 1500 BCE, a bunch of illiterate nomads who didn't have a script, therefore they were uncivilized, they only had an oral tradition. These guys came and they were running around in India with cow, caste, and all this nonsense. And all of a sudden, after Magadha, in the eastern part of India, after they made contact with the Greeks, 300 BCE, suddenly we got the Brahmi script, Ashokan pillar, we got all writing, we became civilized overnight. Then they say, you're a young civilization. You don't have enough gestation time to have developed knowledge in mathematics, astronomy. So if you got Surya Siddhanta, Shushruta Samhita, all these advanced compendiums of knowledge, they say you must have got it from earlier civilizations, the Babylonians, the Greeks, and so on. So this is the kind of corruption that is thrown on us. Adhikara has been taken away from us. We have denied the agency to talk about our own history. Horrendous criminal distortion has happened of Indian history. So I say that many people in the NCRT, education ministry, should be behind bars. They should be. These are civilizational crimes against India. If you go with the evidence, you'll find how many minds have been corrupted, deracinated, distorted, going around with low self-esteem about their own civilization, thanks to this horrendous nonsense pushed on us. Anyway, in this narration, they say Aryans got Sanskrit to India from Central Asia. Brahmi came from Levant, from the Aramaic scripts. They say from Babylon, we got astronomy into India, and the Greeks taught us math and sciences. And they say Turkic Muslims, they got us culture, cuisine, architecture, and things like that. And the British, they got us science, technology, even how to think, rational thought, they got us all that. And Bhakti was taught to us by St. Thomas, who came to Muziris in Kerala. So this is the kind of nonsense that has been put on us. And this is a serious thing because NCRT promotes this kind of thinking. This is there in the textbooks in India, as well as what your children and grandchildren are learning here. It's the same nonsense over here. So where is the evidence? Today, I'm a scientist. I can't talk nonsense to you. I have to show you the evidence. So where is the evidence? I'm calling the evidence in 3 levels. Level 1, first level of evidence. Can I show you contact between India and some other civilization? That's the first level of contact of evidence. Second is there evidence that knowledge is transmitted from one region to the other? That is level 2. Then level 3 is there use of that knowledge system in that foreign culture. That is level 3. Not always do we get all 3 levels of evidence. And I've identified in my talk over here high quality evidence, medium quality evidence, low quality evidence, and so on. So we carefully look at what we have. And I'll show you in every period of time we have had connections. I'm going to show you connections with Sumeria, which is a Mesopotamian civilization from 3000 BCE to about 500 BCE. And in summary, this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you from India, 3000 BC to Sumeria to Babylon, other such places, and around 2000 BC from India to the Fertile Crescent, meaning to Egypt, to the Mitannis, and to the Hittites, basically the Fertile Crescent, Euphrates, Tigris, and Nile River valleys. And from there, from the Hittites going to the Minoans in Greece around 1500 BCE, we have evidence of this. Where is the internal evidence? Let's look at the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is saying over here that, for example, in this verse, he who knows the path of birds flying through the air, abiding within the ocean, knows the course of ships. In other words, in the ancient days, they didn't have GPS satellites. They didn't have compasses. Some had compasses. They would carry birds with them, birds like crows and pigeons and things like that. When they think they're near the land, they'll release one bird and they'll see which direction it is flying in. And that is where land is. So the Rig Veda is calling out this practice and saying, he who knows the path of birds flying through the air, he knows the course of ships. In another place, in Rig Veda is saying, merchants, covetous of gain, crowd the ocean in vessels on a voyage. Even in the Rig Vedic times, there were Vaishyas who were going on voyages to do the trading. And Rig Veda is talking about that. Another place is saying, Ashwins have rescued this person, Bujyu, sailing in a 100-oared ship to his father's house. It is telling us that these are not small, tiny boats. 100 people had oars and they're doing that. That's the size of the ship we are talking about. This is the internal evidence in Rig Veda that Indians had trade on ships, not just ordinary, but on ships. The next question in your mind is, where are they trading with? Okay, they're going on the ship. Who are they trading with? We have got enormous amounts of archaeological evidence. If you look at from Harappa times itself, from Lothal, we had people going, following the coast and trading with people over here. Dilmun is where Bahrain is today, going all the way to the Persian Gulf. This is where Babylon, Elamites, Kassites are. We got evidence of Indus seals over there. A lot of evidence exists over there, land route as well as sea route. So we know they're pretty high quality evidence. We talked last time about the common philosophy between Babylon and India. We talked about Vaisheshika in India, and in Babylon, they're following the same kind of thinking that all of phenomena should be imagined. First imagination, then through rational ways, you have to explain what it is. A very similar epistemology. Then in this work by Gopal Staveg, he's showing the 9 commonalities in Shatapatha Brahmana and Gilgamesh, which is a very famous Babylonian epic. We see that, creation accounts, deities, and so on. And over here, in the traditional accounts, according to Sumerian tradition, they established their communities in southern Mesopotamia. So they migrated there from the east, basically from the east, from the Persian Gulf. This is according to their own accounts. They're saying that we migrated from the sea coming over here through the Persian Gulf. The immigrants brought a developed civilization, knowledge of agriculture, metalworks, art of writing to that area. In fact, Sumerians were ethnically similar to Indians. Genesis, which is the Old Testament, that mentions men migrated from the east to the land of Shinar or Babylon. They built a city using burnt bricks, very similar to Indus Valley. So in their own tradition, they're saying that we have come from the east. That's what it says. And There's also a lot of works today that show Elamite has got many cognates with old southern languages like Tamil and so on. And this is a high quality evidence that came out recently in 2022 in scientific reports in Nature that tried to show how did millets, things like ragi and things like that, how did they come in the Persian Gulf area? And they're showing the oldest archaeological finds are in India over here, going to second millennium, third millennium. And it's from India through the maritime route, the red dots are the first millennium. To spread to the Persian Gulf, the Fertile Crescent, showing that even archaeobotany has come from here. It corroborates their own internal evidence saying the people from East, they are the ones who brought agriculture here and such things. And if you look at the similarity in worship, you see a whole lot of things. For example, their libraries, temple libraries, have texts on astronomy, mathematics, just like Indian temples were repositories of knowledge. And gods were represented with anthropomorphic statues that function as divine image, just like Saguna Brahman in the Indian context, taking forms, representing a personality of a particular divinity. The divinities had to be given food and drink, clothed and unclothed, washed, put to rest, combed, adorned in jewels, applied with makeup, prepared for festivals, special occasions, carried in procession to visit other gods, and so on. Day begins in the morning before sunrise, ceremony, waking of the temple, opening of the gate, 2 morning meals, afternoon meals, closing of the gate, purification with water, purifying with aromatic substances, consecration, divine meals with music, recitation of prayers, curtains placed in front of divine. This is as if I'm describing the Meenakshi temple. If you go to Meenakshi temple and look at the sequence from morning till evening, what the priests are doing there, you'll find exactly this kind of a sequence over there. So you're finding so many commonalities between Hindu practice and Babylonian worship. And in their own traditions, once again, this is the monster that they have called Berosus. And in Babylonica is a historical account from them, written around 500 BC or so on. It talks about how all knowledge revealed by humans by the sea monster after creation. And the sea monster is supposed to come from the Erythraean Sea. Arabian Sea is called the Erythraean Sea. So knowledge has come from that area. And there's a whole lot of other things. Here is evidence in Neo-Babylon. Neo-Babylon, now we have come to 500 BC, literally. So these are cuneiform texts that is talking about an Indian family called the Murusu family living in the Nippur area. So these people are mentioned as a businessman named Murusu, and they're witnesses in business transactions and such things, because business deeds would come from India. Over there, they're signing off saying, yes, we got these kind of things and so on. So this evidence is there over here. And in their own culture, Babylon, they talk about muslin as Sindhu. That's what they refer to it as. So there is trading that we know in these kind of things. In the Jataka tales, there is reference to Baveru. Baveru is an ancient name for Babylon, and it refers to Indian merchants who travel to Baveru, where birds are unknown, using a bird for navigation. A crow you can read this tale. I'm not going to tell you a story, no time for that. But bottom line, it once again talks about the practices that is encoded even in the Jataka tales. And that is one aspect of migration. I talked to you about level 1, which is contact. Here is this contact. In their own tradition, they're talking about knowledge. We got some archaeobotany evidence I shown to you over here. Now, Battle of 10 Kings. We have evidence in the Rig Veda that's talking about Dasaragnya. Dasaragnya is a battle with Sudas on one side and the 10 other Vedic tribes on the other side. And Sudas defeats these 10 other Vedic tribes, and they're forced to leave India. They're forced to go outside India as a consequence of their battle. And there are some people like Srikant Thalagiri and others who are trying to see phonetically, based on the language and such things, what can we say? The Dasa or the Dahi or the Dacian in Romania and places like that. Brigu are these people in Turkey, and Balana are the Baluchi, and the Parthava and the Kivi and the Shiva people, the Kiva people over here. Alina are the Alans of South Russia, or the Hellen of Greece, and so on. There are people trying to do this, including Jijit Ravi in his recent book, Rivers of Rig Veda, who tries to show how did these people spread after this Dasaragnya, the Slavic, Baltic, Germanic, Celtic. And this explains why Sanskritam is related to the Greek, Latin, and other such languages. According to them, it is a Proto-Indo-European language, and there's a migration to India, rather invasion to India. That is what brought the Indo-European language to India. But according to our internal evidence, it shows an out of India after Dasaragnya, which is why some of these commonalities are there. And Do we have evidence of such migrations? I'm not claiming these are the same as what Rig Veda is saying, but we do have evidence. If you look at climatology, we learned that India went through a 300-year dry event 8,200 years ago, intense drought 5,900 years ago, and most recently, about 2000 BCE, we had 200 years of severe drought. And this one gives you an example. Nature, 200-year drought doomed the Indus Valley where the monsoon had failed. And there are some papers that discuss that. There's a Nature paper that's looking at the oxygen O18 isotope. Whenever there's lightning, there is some isotopes of oxygen formed. So this heavy rain, those isotopes will accumulate in places, and we can go and calibrate what is the density of ordinary oxygen to the isotopic oxygen. Learning the half-life, we can say how long back did we have a wet period, did we have a dry period, all those scientific things. We don't have to go into the details. But in their paper, they found that over here, 2000 BC, orange bars represent the dry periods. These downward blue ones are the wet periods. We had a pretty dry period in 2000 BC. That is what this is saying. It lasted for about 200 years. Evidence is there in another paper that is 2019 in Science that is talking about cattle genomics, the presence of the Indian zebu. This is the familiar humped bull. You go to any Indian village, you'll see this humped bull. Suddenly, the prevalence of this animal went up in the Fertile Crescent. About 2000 BC or so, this animal remains are over there. And these people are saying this Bronze Age widespread introgression of Bos indicus from Indus Valley was stimulated by the onset of this multi-century drought 4,200 years ago. And Indian bulls were preferred there because it enhanced herd survival. Because Indian cattle are adapted to very arid conditions, whereas Central Asian cattle were not. So the Indian cattle was preferred. In fact, even the Louvre Museum, if you go to Paris and see this, there's an Akkadian seal that shows how they venerated Indian bull in this place. And more evidence comes from the same region, the Mitannis, the Hittites, and the Egyptians. Mitannis were in particular very interesting because they seem to have spoken Sanskrit. At least the elite in that country seem to have spoken Sanskrit. There are evidences of horse training manuals and such things using Sanskritam words and so on. Anyway, this is a journal paper that talks about Mitanni treaty. The Mitanni kings had treaties with the Egyptian kings, the pharaohs. In one such treaty, this is again there in a Paris museum, cuneiform text, the Mitanni ruler is called Tushratta. He's written a letter to the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep in 1350 BCE, and he's saying, in the name of Indra, in the name of Varuna, in the name of Ashwinis, I promise not to attack you. So these are the kind of peace treaties. But what is he doing? He's invoking Vedic deities. So the question is, what are Vedic deities doing in northern Iraq, so far away from India, thousands of miles from India? What are they doing there? So once again, there's an evidence of this 2000 BC migration where our Kshatriyas have gone out. Why do I say Kshatriyas? Because the Old Testament is full of battles which the Semitic people have with the so-called the Mitannis, with the Hittites and other such people. They're fighting them. Their God is saying, kill them. Don't allow any man, woman, or child. Destroy them completely. Their God has commanded that. So these are our Kshatriya people who went over there and they conquered these areas and they're living there. That's the evidence over here. And there's evidence in medicine too. I'm not going to go deep over here. Mitannis invoked Indra, Varuna, Ashwinis. And when Amenhotep, when he fell ill, the Mitanni king sent a healing statue of Shauka. Shauka is shown Ishtar with a lion. This is the same symbolism as Durga. Durga, her Vahanam is a lion. It is shown over there, right? Same with Shitala. Shitala is the deity of diseases in India and so on. So very similar kind of things. Hittites with smallpox, they had a deity called Kumrusepu, which is linked with Varuna, and so on. I'll skip that. Egyptian medicine, there's a lot of evidence that there is no evidence, rather, of Egyptian medicine before 2000 BC. All evidence of Egyptian learning comes after 2000 BC. For example, the Smith Papyrus, 1500 BC, Eber's Papyrus, 1550 BC, Kahun Papyrus, 1800 BC. After this migration of 2000 BC, suddenly Indian knowledge has sprouted over there. This is a paper by J.F. Roy, a Britisher in 1837, where he's saying in pages 116 to 150, so many plants and materials from India are in use in Egypt for medical purposes, hinting at knowledge transfers from India. Egypt is a more or less a desert country, except for Nile Valley, it's a desert country. How were they getting these plants? It's all from India by trade, and they were using for pharmaceutical purposes. This is something that came in Twitter some time back. I thought it was interesting. They put this figure, which they called an acrobat, Egyptian acrobat, in a 3,250-year-old limestone. I found it interesting. This is exactly yoga asana that we have. It is not really an acrobat, but it's a yoga asana over there. It's a medium, low quality evidence. Then we have more Babylon texts that talk about contact. For example, in Babylon, we find this particular year, 432,000 years. Who over here can tell me what this 432,000 years is? It's the duration of Kali Yuga. In the 4:3, so 2:1, one is Kali Yuga. So if you add up this Chatur Yuga, it comes to 4.32 million years. So what is an Indian constant doing in Babylon? It is again indicating these things. Again, there is some commonalities with Shatapatha Brahman also. I'm zooming over here. There is some genetic evidences that seem to indicate some kind of genetic lineage is there from India in Mesopotamian areas. I call this a medium quality evidence. This is very interesting. Some time back, people were excavating the Gnosis Palace. This is the island of Crete, is associated with the Minoans and the Mycenaeans in that time frame, 1600 BCE. The amazing thing is they found on the frescoes, they found this Indian langur. What is the langur doing there? Langur is an animal that is native to India. It is not native to Greece or Europe, but it is there. That is clear evidence that much before the philosopher period, Indians were interacting with these people. And there are stories, hundreds of stories. I'm not going to tell you, no time, but the stories about Greeks, any Greek story you take, I'll show you a parallel Purana story. Here is one such story about the Pleiades, the missing seventh sister. We have an exact story in the Puranas, in Markandeya Purana, about Agni and the Kritikas and Kartikeya. I'll skip that and not talk about that. Evidence is there in Roman historians about Indians in the Fertile Crescent. For example, the historian called Herodotus, he's saying there are two Ethiopian nations, one in India, the other in Egypt. His information is from the Egyptian priest. Egypt was occupied by the Greeks at some point in time, and when Roman Empire got Christianized, even these people got Christianized and they lost their old religion. But then before that, Herodotus is living in BCE time frame, when still the old religions were there. Egyptian old religion was there. Those priests have told Herodotus that Indians are living with us, and so on. According to another historian, Eusebius, that these people came from the river Indus to the south of Egypt, and they crossed the Red Sea from Arabia, not the Persian Gulf, but the Red Sea. And another historian says Gymnosophists of Ethiopia are descended from Brahmins of India. One more of them says that they came from India. So very interesting to see that. Now jumping to 600 to 500 BCE, we're talking about ancient Greece, and we have evidence that these Greeks have made contact with India. They either came to India. In those days, a Greek scholar was educated only if you go to Ethiopia, Egypt, and India and get the knowledge and come back. Only then you're fully educated. We have evidence of several of them who came, including Democritus. So I'll talk about that presently. So they had knowledge from India now in two transmissions. One is from India, 2000 BC to Hittites, from Hittites to Minoans, and now I'm talking to you direct transfer in this period. If you look at Greek epistemology, we talked about them, big three, Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. Plato's talked about their knowledge systems, epistemology. He says knowledge obtained from senses is not true knowledge. However, true knowledge is that from the mind, basically the mind and wisdom. This is exactly Vaisheshika. So Egyptian Greek epistemology is based upon Vaisheshika, perception and inference, pratyaksha, anumana. That's what it is. Recorded Greek contacts are there for a long time. Skylax, for example, the Greek, is supposed to have navigated the Indus in 509 BCE. And Xerxes, he led a Persian army against the Greeks in 480 BCE, in which there were divisions of Gandharians and Indians also. I'll show that presently. And several Greek thinkers are there who traveled to India. We have evidence of that. And here is one such thing. This stele over here is showing over here that is Shaka, Hindus, Gandhara. So these are the soldiers they're representing from India who fought on the Persian side in Athens. So there's some transmission happening over there also. Library of Alexandria. Alexandria is this port over here in Egypt over here. And typically, in the Indo-Roman trade time, people would come through the Arabian Sea and through the Red Sea and berth over here. And there's a land caravan that will take them up to Alexandria. And from here, in the Mediterranean Sea, European ships would be waiting to take it back to European countries. This is the way Indo-Roman trade was done. So this king called Ptolemy, he made a law that any berthing ship at Mediterranean port should part with their books for copying, according to Galen, who was a Roman physician. And thinkers like Euclid, Archimedes, all of them use the resources of this Library of Alexandria. So this is the place where Indian knowledge was kept, transmission from India into this place. Early Christian writer called Clement of Alexandria, who lived in 150 current era. I'm not going to read all these things. You can follow in this reference over here, high quality evidence. He is talking that Plato does not deny that he procured all that is excellent from philosophy from Indians who he came into in Egypt. He met the Indians in Egypt and he's learned his philosophy from them. And another place he says that these barbarians, philosophy is cultivated by all the Brahmins. They were the gurus were deified by the race of Egyptians, Chaldeans, Arabians, and other such people, and so on. So there is evidence in Christian writings about Indian Brahmins living in Egypt and giving their philosophy over there. Many Greek historians know about India. In India, you find a curious absence of any knowledge about Greece, but Greeks know about India. The situations like today's America. America is completely ignorant of the outside world because they're an arrogant people, right? I mean, everything they want is in USA. Why do I have to learn about history of Africa or history of Asia? Because everything is over here. In fact, people outside want to come into America. So everybody outside, some kid in India will tell you the rivers of America, mountains of America, and so on. But no kid here will tell the rivers. Situations like that in India, old India was such that it was a destination for knowledge, for trade, for money, for everything. Indians did not need to know anything about the outside world. Outside world wanted to know about India. Evidence is there in all these Greek people who have written about India. Pythagoras is one such example of having traveled to India and learned philosophy. When he went back, he became a vegetarian and he started a Gurukulam style of school where he's Acharya in charge and his bachelor disciples around him learning knowledge. And he also believed in transmigration of soul, that reincarnation, he believed that too. Here's a paper that discusses that. Democritus, so he is reported by Cicero as well as Strabos as having visited India, and he's learned a lot. In fact, whatever he says is exact true copy of Vaisheshika, Rishi Kannada, whatever he said, Democritus has said that. And we find that, for example, Hippocrates, who lived in this time frame, he used the exact Ayurveda model of medicine, which is based on Tridosha, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and the Panchamahabhuta, along the interaction of the environment. He got this bile system, humors and bile with hot, dry, cold, and such things. But who was Hippocrates? He was a student of Democritus. So Democritus has taught him about Indian knowledge systems, and he's repeated all of these things. The so-called Hippocrates oath, which doctors take everywhere, is nothing other than what Shushruta and even before him, Charaka, have been talking about, the oath that physicians must take. Same thing that we are taking right now. A lot of evidence on that. History of trigonometry. Well, Western claims that Hipparchus is the father of trigonometry, but they only had chord tables. This is a chord table. This is not trigonometry. Trigonometry is right-angle triangles that appears in Surya Siddhanta for the first time. So we have evidence of this high-quality evidence. The next topic is Indo-Roman trade. From India, through the sea route, western coast, eastern coast, through the sea route, they'll go to the Red Sea and berth over here, land route, and from here on to this. From 200 BC to 400 current era, we have evidence. This is a document called Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. This is a document by a Roman sailor that tells where are the ports in India to do trading with. All these ports on the west coast, east coast of India, they would trade in things like spices, ivory, cotton cloth, metals, wine, gold, all these kind of things, and take them all the way here, land route, and then go on to Mediterranean places. We have evidence of this. Even now, recently, they are finding in a place called Berenike in Egypt. They are finding evidence that is over here. Kushan era, Brahmi, Buddha, and other such things that are uncovering this. When I say recent, I mean 2024, 2023. In Twitter, we're finding all these kind of things. This is not surprising because we know there was a trade happening that time frame. This is the famous Pompeii Lakshmi, evidence of trade with the Roman Empire. This was found Pompeii. It was destroyed by Mount Vesuvius, I think, in 79 current era. This is an ivory statue originated in Satavahana Empire. It exemplifies Indo-Roman trade at that particular time. There was a Greek physician called Dioscorides who lived in 50 to 70 current era, who wrote a 5-volume materials used in medicine. And this has a large number of Indian herbs, recipe of drugs. It was used for 16 centuries in Europe as a way to do it. And I have read this book, and many of these things are from India. These herbs are from India. So clearly, the Indo-Roman trade was not just about spices and things like that, but also medicines. That's what we learned. And in Arikamedu, if you've been to Puducherry or old name Pondicherry, outside Puducherry, you'll find Arikamedu. In Arikamedu, you find evidence of this trade. It is mentioned in this Periplus of Erythraean Sea. It has got evidence of muslin, dyed glass beads, and other such things. I was there some years back and took this picture. Here is a sample cloth that was posted on Twitter by Israel Antiquities Authority a couple of years back. So their archaeologists went, believe it or not, to the garbage dumps of the spice route. They said, let us look at the garbage dump to find out what were they discarding, what were these merchants discarding. So they found these end pieces, when you have a bolt of cloth, the end piece, nobody wants that, right? So they found swatches of Indian cloth, these kinds of things from India. So this is amazing. If you look at some of these things, this is 1,300 years old. Aryabhatta might have been wearing a towel like this. Even today we find things of this nature, right? So it is outstanding, at least for me, to see the workmanship, technology, trade styles that existed in that time frame. So in addition to that, we had the Silk Route. Silk Route was an informal trade network from Southeast Asia, China, India, Central Asia, Arabia, going all the way to Mediterranean lands. And we have evidence of Indian knowledge, examples of Boer manuscript. Boer manuscript was found in Xinjiang province in late 1800. It is a birch bark document that contains the Bela Samhita, Shushruta Samhita, Charaka Samhita, talking about rishis, talking about Tridosha system and everything. That is there in Kashgar. What is it doing in Kashgar? It's on the Trade Silk Road, which shows that not only commerce, but also Indian knowledge formed part of this trade. Then we have evidence, I talked about Dioscorides. This is now before Islam came to Persia. We have evidence of Anushirwan. He was the greatest pre-Islamic emperor. Today he is immortalized in Tehran courthouse. So he sent his physician, Borzio, to India to get medical texts. And in Byzantine kingdom, at the same period of time, they were persecuting people called Nestorians who had philosophical differences on Christianity. So Byzantine people threw them out and they fled to Kerala. They became the Kerala Christians, basically. And they were a source of transmission to Syria. Nestorians and the philosopher Greeks, when Roman Empire adopted Christianity, they persecuted the philosopher Greeks. So they too fled to Jundishapur in Persia. That is where Indian medicine was practiced and propagated in this area. And this is the academy at Jundishapur. Today it's in ruins, but that's how it is. Indians also transmitted to Armenia. We have evidence of 400 BC, at least, to 1800 current era, Armenia, Syria. And this is there, for example, the Jewish records. The Jews say the first Jews landed in India thousands of years ago on trade mission from the King Solomon's court. We have evidence of a whole lot of things. Then when the Romans, they captured Jerusalem in a certain period of time, 70 current era, they destroyed the second temple and many Jews escaped the persecution. Where did they go? They went to India. Why? Because Indo-Roman trade, Jews were in control of the trade routes. Even then, they were the bankers. They knew these things. So they hopped on boats and landed in Kerala. And the Kerala king gave them refuge over there. Then once again, in 1568, when Spanish Inquisition was going on, once again, the Jews, the white Jews called Pardesis, they fled the Inquisition to settle in India. After Israel was set up, they all migrated out. They no longer are there. So that is one aspect of it. Another aspect is Kerala Syrian Christian Church, which is the Nestorians. Nestorians had philosophical differences with Christians in 450 current era, and they were condemned as heretical, and they fled to Persia, Kerala through the trading route and maintained connections with Edessa. What is Edessa? Edessa is in Armenia. Antioch, Nisibis, Edessa, and here it was part of Parthian Empire, 100 BC, and later. Syrian and Armenian merchants had long trade relations with Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and other such places. And they studied Indian theology, philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and their works were translated in Baghdad into Arabic later. This person is very important. He's a bishop called Severus Sebokht. He wrote a book where he rebuked the Greeks, because the Greeks are arrogant of their sciences that they were knew a lot. He said, if you people knew even a little bit about the Indians, he's saying their methods are far superior. He's saying, I'll talk about the science of Hindus, not Assyrians. Their discoveries in astronomy, more ingenious than Greeks or Babylonians, valuable methods of calculations surpasses description. He says they are much, much better than the Greeks. Very important because it's an evidence of Indian knowledge reaching Syria, Armenia in this time frame, 500 current era. Many contacts are there. I'm not going to read this, but Armenia, tremendous documentation is there from ancient times through Alexandrian times, through Mughal period, and so on. Even today, we have Armenian communities in Kolkata, Chennai, Mumbai, Agra, and other places where we have Armenian churches that show these things. Going on to, I'm racing through because I'm looking at the clock there and so going out of time. So if you look at knowledge transfers in medieval, Islamic, colonial, we have tremendous knowledge about this. So Islamic, when bin Qasim attacked Sindh rather in this time frame, they also kidnapped several pundits and took them to Baghdad. They were forced to translate. And that is where Sanskritam knowledge works were translated into Persian and Arabic and injected into this place. Later, Delhi Sultanate, Mughal, from Delhi onwards, direct transmission to Baghdad. So we have evidence of the Abbasid era, where people like Al-Fazari, who translated Brahmagupta's Brahmasputta Siddhanta into Arabic and such things. Manka, he was the Indian physician who translated Shushruta Samhita to Persian. Ibn Sina translated Charaka Samhita. It was a foundation of European medicine. And Abid Allah bin Ali translated Charaka Samhita to Arabic and Persian, translated from Baghdad to Spain, Al-Kindi, and so on. So from Sindh, it went to Baghdad. All these places are part of the Abbasid Empire, where you see Arabia, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, all these things, and southern Spain. Southern Spain, Cordoba was the capital. Northern Spain was Christian, and Toledo was the capital. So in southern Spain, Indian works were injected. From when? From almost 9th century, 10th century, 11th century, 12th century. Indian works were injected via the medium of Arabic. Sanskrit to Arabic, Arabic to Castilian, Castilian to Latin. That was the transmission mechanism over here. There was also a Baghdad House of Wisdom set up by Caliph Harun al-Rashid. It was a translation school for Sanskrit, Greek, Syriac works into Arabic. Many, many works, including Shushruta, Charaka, and other such works. And when the Mongols invaded in 1258, they destroyed this library. However, this Nasir al-Tusi, he rescued 4 lakh manuscripts, which he took to Azerbaijan. And he's important in the history of transmission of mathematics. So Muslims, we know from 1000 to 1700 current era, Al-Baruni and many other people who had taken Indian works, for example, Kitab Tariq al-Hind, works on math, medicine, astronomy, everything was translated from Sanskrit into Arabic and used in the words. For example, in colonial period, before the colonial period, the French, they got to know about Upanishads. Do you know how they got to know about it? It was through Dara Shikoh. Dara Shikoh was the unfortunate younger brother of Aurangzeb. He had a strong interest in Vedanta. So he translated up to 50 Indian works into Persian. Those Persian works found their way into France. That is how, in those translations, they learned about Shakuntala, they learned about Kalidasa, they learned about Indian philosophy. Voltaire and other such peoples were schooled on Dara Shikoh's works that were translated. So there's one more instance of transmission. And evidence is all over the place. Al-Baruni is talking about mathematics. Some more Muslim people outside India, Ibn Tamim, Al-Hadim. I'm not going to read all these names, but many of them are talking about Indian mathematics and so on. And medieval Europe also initially, so from India to Islamic lands, from Islamic lands translated into Spain and Italy, because southern Italy, Sicily, was under the control of Abbasid people. So when it was under Muslim control, Indian works via Arabic were injected into Italy as well as in Spain, in Toledo. And through translation schools, they were diffused to Europe in all these time frames, and colonial period also later. So in medieval Europe, Isidorus of Seville, this rabbi, Leonardo of Pisa, Alexander Deville, all these people, there's evidence they took knowledge from the Muslims and translated it into Latin, and they were using it. Gerbert of Aurillac, who later on became Sylvester, the Pope Sylvester, He also learned Indian mathematics instead of Arabic, Latin. He started using these things for numerals. Leonardo Fibonacci. So he also his father was a trader who used to work in Algeria. So he used to go as a young boy with him, and he learned about Hindu mathematics from the Muslim traders. And he wrote a book in Latin that talks about these things. But bottom line is that there were translation schools in Toledo where between 10th to 13th century, their only job was to take Arabic texts, translate them into Latin. So this is how Europe, you have to see the state of Europe. And I know I'm jumping a lot because I have limited time to tell you these things. Europe, as long as they had contact with ancient Greeks, they were a progressive place. Roman Empire, things are still decent. 330 current era, the Roman Emperor Constantine adopted Christianity. Overnight, Europe went from cosmology, theology to theological system. The Christian theological system where you don't question, you just believe. Your role is as a believer. Science, technology, everything took a downfall. Europe went in dark ages the minute they adopted Christianity. This was there till the age of Reformation or the scientific revolution in 1500 current era, 1600 current era. This is the state. They were going towards that Reformation by absorbing Indian knowledge. The nobility in Europe used to send their sons to Spain, to Muslim Spain, to learn from the Moors. They call them the Moors, right? So that's what I'm showing you over here. 10th to 13th century, there were translation schools in Toledo, which is in northern Spain, that were translating these texts from Cordoba. So where is the evidence of that? Raymond of Toledo, the archbishop, he started the translation efforts over there with a team of Toledans, Jewish scholars, madrasa teachers, and such people, translating from Arabic to Castilian to Latin. One name, Gerard of Cremona, he translated 87 Arabic texts to Latin in math, astronomy, medicine. I have made a list of those things. In that is Sushruta Samhita. In that is Aryabhata's works, Brahmagupta's works, and other such things. So going on, in Italy, Sicily also, there was translation. That's what I'm talking about over here. This is interesting. This is a book that British Library, they put on Twitter about 4 years ago, showing in 12th century Britain, we were so advanced that we had surgery. It's an illustrated manuscript. I looked at this and laughed because these are exactly Shushruta's procedures. Here there is one on hemorrhoids. Here there's one on cataract surgery. Here there is one on nasal growth, how they're removing it. So they had learned from Sushruta Samhita, which is translated by Al-Fazari into Arabic, that got injected into Spain, southern Spain. And then we have this Gerard of Cremona, who's translated that in the 11th century into Latin. From there, it's diffused into Europe. In 12th century Britain, they have illustrated manuscripts showing how to do surgery. So it's an example of Indian surgical methods coming over here. And I will skip all these things, how Indian numbers went over there. And this is a book in 1556, a British book, the first in mathematics, that is using a scholar-master dialogue that is popularized in Upanishads. Even in 1100s, Bhaskara too had used Leelavati, a mastered scholar dialogue, that is showing British knowledge of place value multiplication of large numbers by shift and add using Hindu numerals. So here the scholar and master have a dialogue, how to take 5541 multiplied by itself by shift and add. Again, cube that number. How do you get that? This is routine work in India, right? But in 1556, this was new knowledge from the British. I want you to think about this for a minute. They were using Latin numerals till then. So suddenly this knowledge had come to Europe because of some other transmitters, and they started using this. 100 years after this is Newton. In 100 years, Britain has gone from Latin numerals to learning how to do place value multiplication to somebody like Newton. I just want you to think about, is it possible without prior knowledge? So we have evidence in Europe, 1200s to 1300s, a direct transfer of knowledge. Marco Polo, John, who was a Catholic missionary in Mylapore, Jordalis Catalani, who came to Kollam rather, and other places, they've taken knowledge. 1400s, when the Portuguese, before that, Niccolo da Conti, who came to Deccan, Vijayanagar, Mylapore, eyewitness accounts. Then we have Alfonsi Nikitin of Russia, Vasco da Gama, and other such people. They have also taken Indian knowledge over. Elaborate example of how Aryabhata's works have impacted Copernicus. I'm not going to read all these things, but my talks have given this in fairly great detail. And the Europeans, we have evidence that they're plagiarized. So the problem is, when Europe was under strict theocracy, it was Catholic all the time. until the so-called Reformation, when Martin Luther started off the Protestant movements, right? The church was in tight control of their minds. The church wanted to take back Spain, which was under the Muslims. They called it Reconquista. So the knights went there to fight these people. Eventually, they managed to free Spain from the Muslims, and they went through something called Inquisition, where they wanted to cleanse their society of Islamic people, Jewish people, and reconverts, and all those kind of things. So any Muslim work was seen as seeking knowledge from Satan, inviting savage retribution. So you had condemnations of Paris, Roman Inquisition, Spanish Inquisition, and so on. So all these Renaissance European scholars, they hid their sources and passed off Indian Greek works as their own original knowledge. So they came out of backward, primitive, disease-ridden, dark ages Europe, suddenly coming with this knowledge. So we are told the flowering of European thought, nothing could be further from the truth. It is an accumulation of Indian knowledge, plagiarized Indian knowledge that has led to these kinds of things. Colonial era, I don't have to talk much about this. Most of us know from the Portuguese, they came with literal armadas over here, huge convoys of ships that came, and there are Portuguese scientists who came to India too. Pedro Nunes, Castro, and other such people who took Indian knowledge to Europe. There was an information gold rush by every colonial occupier where missionaries are the lead of collecting. For example, when the French would land in Tamil Nadu, first thing they do is they go to the temples and they force the priests to give the books that they have. If not, they bribe first. If not bribe, they kill him or threaten him and take it away. And they accumulated the largest collection of Shaiva Siddhanta manuals. If you go to Puducherry today, Puducherry is Pondicherry, go there. Over there, you'll find French Institute of Pondicherry. On their compound wall, there's a plaque, golden plaque saying the world's largest collection of Shaiva Siddhanta. So if you want to do research on Shaiva Siddhanta, you must go to the French now. You must take their permission, their library to access it. They have adhikara. We have lost it. Very unfortunate. But anyway, this is a book that I took in Pondicherry, this French Institute of Pondicherry, that shows a bibliography of all the books taken by Bartholomew Ziegenbalg, who's a Dutch guy in Tranquebar. All the books that he collected, hundreds and hundreds of books that he collected in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and other places. Many transmissions are there. I'm not going to bore you to death with this, but Garcia de Arto in Goa, who wrote this Ayurveda book, translated in Latin by Clusius, this Dutch botanist, Hendrik van Riel in Malabar, who wrote this work with Ayurvedic physicians' help. Even Johann Koenig, who was a pupil of Carl Linnaeus, a very famous botanist, he made use of Ayurvedic physicians' help in Kerala. I talked to you about Bartholomew Ziegenbalg. Tamil medical books were collected by him, and many, many others. So there's a lot of evidence on what colonials had collected. This is one of the recent researches going on, that Yukti Bhasha, this is a Malayalam compendium of works by the Kerala School of Mathematics, people like Madhava, Nilakanta Somayaji, Parameshwara, and others. Enormous mathematics is there. There is mathematics of infinite series. Infinite series is a precursor, pre-calculus. If you do pre-calculus in high school, you learn that limits, existence of limits, these are all the basics of calculus. All that is there over here. Integral solutions, series expansion, integration, differentiation, mind you, 200 years before Newton, before Gregory. This is there in Yukti Bhasha. Yukti Bhasha is Malayalam. People today in European universities are trying to translate this and see what else we can uncover from these texts. So not only West, also East, enormous evidence is there. I talked to you about Buddhist route as well as Silk Route evidence is there. In fact, there's a Chinese poem that says in this time frame, the Brahmin priest, referring to Nagarjuna, who bestowed eyes, basically doing cataract surgery in Shushruta's methods and bestowing eyes to the Chinese and so on. So there's evidence of cannabis used as a medicine in ancient China, 500 BCE. This cannabis basically grows in India, right? This plant grows in India, cannabis sativa, indica, and other such things. And it is also mentioned by Dioscorides as a painkiller. In those days, you do surgery. Today, you have all kinds of things, right? Those days, you chew opium and things like that, and you get into a state, and they do that. It is there in Ebers Papyrus in the Egyptian medical book from this time frame. Anyway, we have evidence of Fahian, who had traveled to India in this time frame, came in the land route to India, visited these places, took the sea route back. Evidence of Huansang. This is a man I admire the most from this part of history, who walked all the way against the Chinese authorities' laws, came into India, traveled to northern India, southern India, left a lot of eyewitness accounts, collected books, and walked back to China. So he is a very important resource of information. Yi Xian came from the sea route to India and went back. They were not only Chinese who came to India, we have evidence of Indians who went to China and settled down there. In India, we forgot about them. In China, they gave them Chinese names, so we don't even know who these people are. But there are a lot of such people. One example is Kumarajiva, who translated many Sanskrit works into Chinese and so on. Then this is Bodhidharma, who was a Pallava prince who went to China and formed the Shaolin monastery and led to creation of Kung Fu and things like that. He was killed in this Hain massacre in this particular time frame. We have Dignaga, who in Chinese is called Yulong and so on, who did this particular school. We have got Vajrabodhi, one more such person. So we have some such people. In China, even today in Guangzhou province, you got this Buddhist temple. They call it Buddhist temple, but you see Airavata, you see Shivalinga over there. It's a Hindu temple, basically. So Tamil merchants, when they would go there for trading, they would use that for prayers and things of that nature. Many kingdoms in Southeast Asia, I don't even have to talk about the Funan province, all the way down, different time frames, we find Hindu kingdoms here. So Southeast China, clear evidence is there. So in summary, I've told you a lot. I've run out of time. So this is my last slide. So I've shown you transmission out of India in various time frames from 3000 BC. In my talks, I'm going even further. I'm showing evidence from the shamanic tradition, from the early religion, going back to 30,000 years, using genetics as my evidence over there. But anyway, in this talk, I've shown to you from 3000 BCE. I've shown you these various routes. Every route that we talked about, for example, Sumerian route 3000 BCE. We talked about 2000 BC to the Fertile Crescent. We talked about Islamic route in 700 to 1700. We talked about how it went to Abbasid kingdom, all these Islamic countries in Northern Africa to Spain. From Spain, translation schools, diffusion to Europe. We learned about the Greek philosophers. Before that, the Hittite to Minoan in 1500 BC. The Greek philosophers, Indo-Roman trade route from 200 BC onwards. We learned about Armenia, Syria, and colonial direct transmission from India into Europe, as well as eastwards transmission. So truly, India has been a Vishwaguru. In 45 minutes, I could not, sorry, I apologize, I can't do much justice to this, but there's tremendous amounts of information I've collated over here that shows you this transmission. If somebody comes and says that India was people who learned from the outside world, we can push that back with level 1 evidence, level 2 evidence, even level 3 evidence that shows all of these things. Prior to 3000 BC, migrations, genetic records, Vedic accounts, 3000 to 2000 BC, Harappa trade route, Mesopotamia, 2000 monsoon failure to Fertile Crescent, 500 BC, Greek travelers, Pythagoras, Skylax, Democritus. After Alexander, contacts to 200 BC, Roman trade, periplus of Erythraean Sea in this time frame, Silk Road to Southeast Asia, China, medieval trade route, Syria, Armenia, Persia, and beyond, Arabs, 711 current era to Abbasid in Europe, Muslim, 1000 current era to 1700s, translations to Arabic and Persian, colonial era, 1700s to 1940s, including today. Today morning, I read the latest Scientific American, where they're discussing something called deep meditation, where Harvard Medical School has got a division for advanced meditation, where they got a Buddhist practitioner of Vipassana, advanced Vipassana, where he's done 15,000 hours of meditation. So he's an advanced practitioner. He's going to Samadhi, basically. So they're talking about total cessation of the mind. They put so many MRI scanning sensors over there, they're seeing which areas of the brain light up and things like that. So even today, they're digesting Indian knowledge. They refuse to say it was Vedanta. One line says Vedic Indians practice this, but basically they're saying when these people go to deep meditation, they lose the sense of self. They get a sense of connectedness to everything, to Brahman. It's basically Vedanta. That is what they're talking about. So even today, this kind of digestion of Indian knowledge is taking place all the way to present times. Okay, with that, what we have done is in the first talk, we talked about how our identity is under attack, the 5 agencies. The second talk, we talked about evidence to uphold the antiquity of the Indian civilization. In the third talk, we talked about the epistemology of Indian knowledge, well-developed mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. In this final talk, I've talked to you about how Indian knowledge system seeded the ancient world to modern world in various periods of time, completely unacknowledged. it's my understanding that next week also, next Sunday also, we're going to have a 1 hour talk where you can ask me a question and answers. There'll be a one-on-one session where you can talk. I'll summarize what you've done and we can have a Q&A. So thank you very, very much for your attention and deeply humbled. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have two questions. Are you shocked? Are you feeling proud of India? If you are, please stand up and give this man a standing ovation. He fully deserves it. No. So I am going to switch to the slides here. If you give me a minute, please have a seat. Because these lectures, all four of them, were actually a little too short from my perspective, and I think from many of yours as well. And it has raised a lot of questions in our minds. So we are so very grateful to Dr. Vedam to agree to give us another session, which will be solely dedicated to question and answers. It will be done on next Sunday, 21st of July, from 10:30 to 11:30. Please note the change in time because he has to probably travel immediately after that. So he accommodated us by doing the session just before his taking a flight. So we really appreciate that very much, Dr. Vedam. And if you have any questions, please send those to this email address, info@rsmrhouston.org. We'll be consolidating those questions so that we can have a more productive session. And then, of course, you can always ask in person as well once you're here. So that was the connected to the presentation announcement. I'd like to invite Mr. Vijay Kani to have a similar announcement which is related to Dr. Vedam's talk.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Vijay Karni. I represent the Hindu University of America. I run the Friends of Hindu University chapter in the Houston area. Listening to Dr. Vedam is like trying to take a drink of water from a faucet. And at Hindu University, we have a lot of, it's an online university. I won't take too much time here, but if you folks want a little bit more information, please talk to me during lunch and I'll be happy to share with you. Dr. Vedam is starting a course. In the third lecture, he talked about a lot of slides were on astronomy. So astronomy of the ancient Indians, that is not the exact title of the course. With all this hurricane, my notes got messed up. But on the website of Hindu University, and it starts today at 6 p.m. So if you folks are interested, you need to go on the Hindu University website and enroll today in the next few hours. And I'm sure if you missed the first lecture, it's not that big a deal. He'll still give you credit for it. So that was my announcement. So please come talk to me. I'll give you a little bit more detail about it. Thank you so much.
So back to our regular announcements. Namaste. Well, we just went through a disaster which came as Beryl. And I know most of us lost power and internet and probably pieces of our property as well. But as long as we are safe, those all can be restored. So my hope and prayers are that you are all safe from Beryl. The next part is that Arya Prathinidhi Sabha America is celebrating Maharishi Swami Dayanand's 200th birth year. and 150 years of Arya Samaj at the International Arya Mahasammelan in New York, Long Island, New York. Hofstra University is the venue. From July 18th to 21st, we'll be getting a huge number of Vedic scholars who will be presenting a lot of good information, and there'll be discussions, there'll be workshops, and there'll be cultural programs. It's always a great venue to meet other people, meet other scholars, and exchange ideas. But this is a unique one where almost 100 people are coming from India, and there'll be another maybe 700-800 from the US and Canada. So please join us if you can. Going to the next one. Our regular programs here at Arya Samaj Houston are yoga every Saturday, Sunday, starting from 8 till 9:30. We have weekly satsangs, which this presentation was a part of, starting at 9:45 in the morning until noon, followed by Preeti Bhoj. And we have actually 3 schools, which are, I'm going to talk about those in the next couple of slides. And their admission is open right now. And DA Montessori School and Elementary School for children from 2.5 years of age to 5th grade. Then Vedic Sanskriti School, Houston and Global. And there's, for adults, we have education of Vedas, Upanishads, and other scriptures, which are held almost 4 days every week at different times. So please take advantage of those. This is a slide to make us feel proud of our children who have graduated from DAV Montessori School. They have gotten this state championship award 3 years in a row, which is something to be proud of. And the admission for that is, as I said already, it's open, and you can contact director at davhouston.org or the website of www.davhouston.org. And the 2 schools, which is Vedic Sanskriti School Global and Vedic Sanskriti School, which is held here, their information is here also. You can contact Acharyaji or go to our website and get your child admitted. This is best of the both worlds, ladies and gentlemen, where you can get benefits of what your children can learn here in the West, and also at the same time learn our basic heritage, basic values. For more information, you can go to rsmajhouston.org and or go to the Facebook page. Before I end the announcements, I would like to recognize and welcome the group from New York and appreciate their contribution at the bhajans. May I ask them to please stand so we can welcome them with a round of applause. Thank you. And let's all rise for Aarti and Shanti Path, please. Thank you.
ओम जय जगदीश हरे जनों के संकट क्षण में दूर करे। ओम जय जगदीश हरे। जो ध्यावे फल पावे, दुख विनशे मन का। स्वामी दुख विनशे मन का। सुख संपत्ति घर आवे, सुख संपत्ति घर आवे। कष्ट मिटे तन का। ओम जय जगदीश हरे। मात पिता तुम मेरे, शरण गहूँ मैं किसकी। स्वामी शरण गहूँ मैं किसकी। परमात्मा तुम अंतर्यामी, स्वामी तुम अंतर्यामी। पार ब्रह्म परमेश्वर, पार ब्रह्म परमेश्वर तुम सबके स्वामी। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, तुम करुणा के सागर, तुम पालन करता, स्वामी तुम पालन करता। मैं सेवक तुम स्वामी, मैं सेवक तुम स्वामी, कृपा करो भरता। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, तुम हो एक गोचर सबके प्राणपति, स्वामी सबके प्राणपति। किस विध मिलो दयामय, किस विध मिलो कृपामय, ऐसी दो सुमति। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, दीन बंधु दुख हरता तुम रक्षक मेरे, स्वामी तुम रक्षक मेरे। करुणा हस्त बढ़ाओ, अपनी शरण लगाओ, द्वार पड़ू मैं तेरे। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, विषय विकार मिटाओ, पाप हरो देवा, स्वामी कष्ट हरो देवा। श्रद्धा भक्ति बढ़ाओ, श्रद्धा प्रेम बढ़ाओ, संतन की सेवा। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, जय जगदीश हरे, स्वामी जय जगदीश हरे। भक्त जनों के संकट, दास जनों के संकट क्षण में दूर करे। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, ओम जय जगदीश हरे, ओम जय जगदीश हरे। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःख भाग् भवेत्। हे नाथ सब सुखी हो, कोई न हो दुखारी, सब हो निरोग भगवन, धन धान्य से भंडारी। सब भाद्र भाव देखी, सन्मार्ग के पथिक हो, दुखिया न कोई होवे, सृष्टि में प्राण धारी। दुखिया न कोई होवे, सृष्टि में प्राण धारी। शांति पाठ। ओम द्यौ शान्तिरन्तरिक्षं शान्तिः, पृथ्वी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः, वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिः, सर्वं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः, सामा शान्तिरेधि। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। उद्घोष। जो बोले सो अभय। इतने धीरे धीरे बोल रहे हो। जो बोले सो अभय। मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम श्री रामचंद्र जी की, योगेश्वर श्री कृष्ण जी की, महर्षि दयानंद जी की, ओम का झंडा, आर्य समाज, वेद की ज्योति, प्रणव ध्वनि भोजन मंत्र। ओम अन्नपते अन्नस्य नो देहनमिवस्य शुष्मिणः प्रप्रदातारं तारिषौर्यं नो द्युपदे चतुष्पदे। ओम शांति शांति शांति। सभी को हम सबकी ओर से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, नमस्कार, अभिवादन।
सबका पूज्य है हम, ओम का पूजन करें। ओम ही के ध्यान से हम, ओम ही के ध्यान से हम शुद्ध